The cold silence of space was shattered by the tremor of distant explosions. Earth's blue sphere hung like a jewel in the vastness of the cosmos. But the Earth Defense Fleet, EDF, was not looking at its beauty today. Captain Emily Rhodes stood at the command bridge of the Horizon, the EDF flagship. Her sharp eyes traced the readouts on the holodisplay. A wave of dread swept over her as she saw the unmistakable patterns of enemy ships breaking through the atmosphere. "Status report!" Rhodes barked, her voice cutting through the tension. "Multiple alien vessels entering Earth's orbit, Captain," Lieutenant Hayes replied, his voice tense. "They're moving fast. Too fast. It's a full-scale assault." "Empire?" she asked, her tone flat. "Confirmed," Hayes said. "The Galactic Empire. They're deploying dreadnoughts." Rhodes felt a cold chill run down her spine, but she pushed it aside. Fear had no place in her mind. Not now. She squared her shoulders, eyes locked on the distant fleet that was already beginning to open fire on Earth's outer defense stations. The satellites exploded in flashes of light as the invaders' weapons pummeled them from above. The horizon shuddered as a blast wave reverberated through space, the first sign of the incoming attack. "Deploy all defensive drones and scramble fighters. Prepare for engagement," Rhodes ordered, her voice steady. "On it, Captain," Hayes responded. Rhodes moved toward the tactical console, her mind working 1,000 miles a minute. The Empire had no idea what they were walking into. They believed Earth was still a backwater planet, defenseless and easy to crush under the weight of their superior technology. They were wrong. "We'll make them regret this," she muttered, her hands flying over the controls. The first wave of enemy ships, immense and formidable, slid into orbit with terrifying precision. They had no intention of negotiation or surrender. The Galactic Empire had never been known for diplomacy. Instead, they favored annihilation and domination. "All units, prepare for battle!" Rhodes shouted across the bridge. The crew sprang into action, hands moving in practice unison. Her mind flickered back to the first report she'd received only days ago. The intelligence had been clear. The Empire had set its sights on Earth, believing it an easy target. The attack had been swift, methodical, and calculated. It was a pattern she had studied over and over again in her years of service. The Empire had underestimated Earth, and now they would pay the price. "They're not here for negotiations," Rhodes said, turning toward her communications officer, Commander Liu. "Get me the Council. Now." Liu's fingers flew across his console, and within moments, the faces of Earth's Global Defense Council appeared on the holographic screen. They looked as grim as she felt. "Captain Rhodes," the lead representative, General Blair, spoke first. "What's the situation?" "The Empire has arrived. The first wave is already in orbit. They've begun targeting our outer defense stations. We'll have less than 30 minutes before they make landfall," Rhodes answered, her eyes sharp. "We've prepared for this," Blair said, but there was a tremor in his voice. "What's our strategy?" "We strike first," Rhodes replied. "Prepare all ground forces. We'll need every advantage we can get." She turned back to the console. A map of the battlefront lit up before her. The enemy dreadnoughts were forming into a wedge, their formation designed to hit Earth from multiple angles. It was clear that they weren't just attacking. They were testing their superiority. The Empire had launched countless similar campaigns across the galaxy, each more brutal than the last, each more victorious. They hadn't expected resistance like this. "Captain, they're targeting New York," Lieutenant Hayes called out. "The city's defenses are down. It's a direct hit." Rhodes gritted her teeth. The invaders weren't wasting any time. The Earth Defense Fleet had trained for this moment, but no one could have predicted how fast the Empire would strike. The Galactic Empire wasn't a force to be trifled with. "Redirect all fighter squadrons to New York. Use every weapon we've got," she ordered. "No mercy." The crew scrambled, moving with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Rhodes watched as the fleet's defense systems came online, fighters launched, and drones scrambled into position. But deep down, She knew that the Empire's might was far beyond anything they had faced before. This was not just an invasion, it was a test, and Earth was the subject. Captain! Lu's voice broke through the tension. We're receiving a message from their flagship. Put it through, Rhodes said. The hologram on the bridge flickered and warped before revealing a tall, imposing figure in black armor. Its face was concealed behind a helmet, its eyes glowing in unsettling green. This is Supreme Commander Zorath 9 of the Galactic Empire. The figure's voice boomed, reverberating in the silence of the bridge. Your extinction is inevitable. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to live as slaves. Resist, and we will erase you from existence. There was no hesitation in Zorath 9's voice, no room for negotiation. He spoke as if the very idea of resistance was laughable, a mere afterthought. The arrogance was palpable. Rhodes stared at the projection, her mind racing. She had anticipated this moment, had known the Empire would demand surrender, but hearing it still made her blood boil. Earth was not their plaything. You're welcome to try, Rhodes said, her voice laced with steel. But we're not giving up. Zorath 9's figure stiffened, his lips curling in a faint sneer. Your defiance will be your undoing, human. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in a heavy silence. The crew exchanged glances, but there was no fear in their eyes. Only determination. Captain, the dreadnoughts are moving into position, Hayes reported. We have less than 15 minutes. Hold steady, Rhodes said. We've prepared for this. VDF may be outnumbered, but we're not going down without a fight. Her voice rang out across the bridge as she activated the ship's battle alert. The battle had begun, and the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The first wave of the Empire's attack had been brutal. Earth's outer defense stations had been obliterated in a matter of minutes, and now, as the dreadnoughts loomed closer, Captain M. Rhodes watched her fleet brace for the inevitable. The calm that had settled over the command bridge after the initial shock was gone. In its place was the harsh reality of war. The air felt thick with tension as the crew moved with quiet urgency, their faces lit by the cold glow of consoles. Captain! Lieutenant Hayes called out, his voice edged with anxiety. Our fighters report enemy interceptors inbound. They've engaged with the Vanguard. Rhodes pressed her lips together, keeping her emotions in check. The Empire had expected an easy conquest, but they were about to learn just how hard a fight humanity could put up. We can't let them break through, she said, her voice sharp. Redirect half of our fighter squadrons to reinforce them. Give them hell, and don't hold back. Hayes nodded, issuing commands immediately. Rhodes turned her attention back to the tactical display. The dreadnoughts had begun to descend toward Earth's surface, their massive forms dwarfing the remaining EDF ships. They had no intention of negotiating. This was about domination, and it was happening too fast. Status on the ground forces? Rhodes asked, her eyes flicking to the Global Defense Council's live feed. Commander Lu's fingers danced across his console, calling up a report. The central command centers are still operational. Ground forces are mobilizing, but it will take time to organize them into a cohesive defense. The Empire's land assault units are already dropping. Paris and London are already under attack. Damn it, Rhodes muttered. The invasion was methodical. Ground forces would be swarming major cities soon, and it was only a matter of time before they hit critical infrastructure. If Earth was going to have a chance, they needed to slow the Empire's momentum and buy time for the defense forces to regroup. Send a priority message to the ground command. Tell them to focus on sabotage. Delay the enemy. Make every inch of ground cost them, Rhodes ordered. Acknowledged, Lu responded. Rhodes leaned forward, her mind racing. The Empire was known for their overwhelming power, but humanity had an edge they hadn't counted on: adaptability. It was Earth's greatest strength, and it was time to exploit it. Captain, we've received incoming transmissions from the resistance cells on the ground, Lu said, pulling up a communication link. They're offering their support. Rhodes leaned in, her eyes narrowing. Put them through. A hologram flickered to life in front of her, revealing a rough-looking man clad in military fatigues. His face was scarred, but his eyes burned with defiance. Captain Rhodes, we've got boots on the ground in Paris, Cairo, and New Delhi. We've been waiting for your signal, the man said, his voice low and resolute. Hold your positions, Rhodes said. We're sending reinforcements, but I need you to buy us time. Sabotage, disrupt, slow them down. You'll have our full support. We're already on it. You just make sure you don't let them take the sky. The transmission cut, and Rhodes turned back to the bridge, her resolve hardening. This was far from over. The Empire might have the firepower, but humanity had the will to survive. Lieutenant Hayes, Rhodes called out, prepare our fleet for evasive maneuvers. We can't let those dreadnoughts lock onto us with their main cannons. I want shields up, fighters in formation. Keep them on the defensive. They think we're weak, they're about to find out how wrong they are. Understood, Captain, Hayes replied, his fingers flying over the controls. As the battle raged in space, the ground conflict continued to spiral. Paris had been hit first, the majestic city now a war zone. Alien walkers stomped through the streets, their massive legs crushing everything in their path. Buildings crumbled as the Empire's ground forces advanced with ruthless efficiency. Resistance fighters, armed with makeshift weapons, mounted desperate counterattacks, striking with whatever they could scrounge up. They were outgunned, outmanned, and yet, they fought on with an intensity the invaders hadn't expected. In London, a similar scene unfolded. The Empire's landing crafts had deployed in the middle of the city, sending shockwaves through the heart of civilization. Resistance forces had moved quickly, planting explosives in the streets, taking out supply lines, and slowing the Empire's forces at every turn. Though outmatched, they were proving that humanity's will could not be broken so easily. Meanwhile, back on the horizon, Rhodes had ordered her fleet to engage in guerrilla tactics, exploiting every weakness in the Empire's formation. The first wave of fighters had made their run, swarming around the dreadnoughts like angry hornets, launching missiles and bombarding the colossal ships with laser fire. For every hit the Empire's ships took, they retaliated with brutal force, but the EDF fleet kept their distance, keeping the Empire's larger ships occupied while giving humanity's ground forces time to regroup. Rhodes watched as the first fighter squadron broke through the Empire's defenses, a blaze of fire and metal tearing through the vacuum of space. It wasn't much, but it was a victory, and in times like these, small victories were everything. Captain, Hayes reported again. We've made contact with the fleet's second wave. They're en route. We're still holding our ground, but the Empire is escalating. Their main ships are deploying more forces. They'll overwhelm us if we don't act fast. Rhodes nodded. They couldn't afford to sit back and wait. They had to strike back now, before the Empire could fully establish their dominance over the planet. Prepare the main assault, she said. We're going to take the fight to them. Target their command ships. If we can take down their flagship, we can break their coordination. That'll give us the chance we need. Her fingers moved across the console as she activated the fleet's full capabilities. I want every ship on standby. Fighter squadrons, we're going to hit them hard. If we're going to stand a chance, this is our moment. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Every crew member knew what was at stake. The next move would determine the outcome of humanity's resistance. Captain, Lou spoke up, his voice tight. The resistance forces are reporting heavy losses. They need reinforcements now. Rhodes closed her eyes for a brief moment, the weight of their struggle settling in. The fight for Earth wasn't just hers anymore. It was theirs, their collective struggle to preserve humanity. We'll send them everything we've got, she said. Humanity's not going down without a fight. The countdown had begun, and with it, the fate of Earth rested on the thin line between survival and extinction. The skies over Earth had turned a sickly shade of green, an unnatural color cast by the enormous dreadnoughts hovering above. The Empire's forces were closing in, their sheer presence crushing any hope of resistance. The EDF fleet, though battered, wasn't ready to give in. Captain Emily Rhodes stood at the command center of the horizon, her hands gripped firmly on the edge of the console. The war was no longer a distant threat, it was here, and it was now. "Captain, their flagship is within striking distance," Lieutenant Hayes reported, his voice tight with anticipation. Rhodes stared at the holographic map before her. The Empire's flagship, a colossal vessel almost the size of a city, sat at the heart of their formation, a glowing focal point of their entire invasion. Taking it out was humanity's best chance to break their coordination, to put a crack in their impenetrable assault. It was a long shot, but they had no other choice. "Focus all firepower on the flagship," Rhodes ordered. "We're going to make them bleed." Hayes quickly relayed the command, and the fleet moved into position. Fighters swarmed, their engines roaring as they closed the gap between them and the flagship. The alien ships retaliated with volleys of energy blasts that rippled through space, lighting up the darkness like bolts from the gods. EDF fighters weaved in and out, evading the fire with agility and precision, but the odds were stacked against them. "Captain, we're losing fighters fast," Hayes reported, his fingers a blur on the controls. "The Empire's secondary ships are providing cover for their flagship. We can't break through. Pull back and regroup," Rhodes said, her voice steady despite the pressure mounting on them. "Get the cruisers in position. If we can't breach them from the outside, we'll take them from the inside." As she spoke, the Horizon powered up its main weapons. The ship's cannons hummed to life, their immense power ready to deliver the first real blow to the enemy. The flagship loomed larger on the holographic map, its dark metallic surface gleaming ominously. "We're going to hit them with everything we've got," Rhodes said, more to herself than anyone else. She knew this was their moment. If they failed, the fight would be over before it truly began. "Captain, we've received a distress call from Paris," Commander Lou's voice cut through her thoughts. "The ground forces are being overwhelmed. They're calling for immediate support." "Damn it," Rhodes muttered. Paris was a critical point in the battle. If the Empire took the city, it would break Earth's morale. The resistance on the ground was already stretched thin, and without reinforcements, they wouldn't hold much longer. "Redirect half of the remaining squadrons to Paris," Rhodes ordered. "We won't let them fall. All remaining ships focus fire on the flagship. We end this now." The crew moved quickly, but every second felt like an eternity. Outside, the battle continued in a deadly dance of destruction. The EDF fleet, outnumbered but not outmatched, swarmed the flagship, launching waves of missiles and energy blasts. The Empire responded in kind, their weapons unleashing devastating barrages that tore into the EDF ranks. Explosions filled space, each one more violent than the last. On the horizon, Rhodes stood firm, watching the chaos unfold before her. She felt the weight of every decision, every life at stake. She had been through countless battles, but this was different. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. "Captain, the flagship is retaliating," Hayes said, his voice grim. "They've locked onto us. We're in their sights." Rhodes didn't flinch. "Full evasive maneuvers. We're not going down without a fight." The Horizon shuddered as the ship veered sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding a blast that could have torn through its hull. The crew braced for impact, but the ship held steady. Rhodes had seen worse, much worse. She wasn't going to let the Empire win. "We've taken out one of their secondary ships," Hayes said, his voice tinged with relief. "But their flagship is still standing." "Keep pushing," Rhodes ordered, her gaze fixed on the flagship. "We have to keep the pressure on. We can't afford to let up." As the battle raged, the resistance on the ground continued to fight with everything they had. Paris had become a war zone, the once beautiful city now a charred wasteland. Alien walkers crushed buildings underfoot as soldiers fought desperately to hold their ground. In the heart of the city, resistance fighters used every bit of ingenuity to launch guerrilla strikes against the invaders, making the Empire pay for every inch of territory they gained. Back on the horizon, the crew was starting to show signs of fatigue, but Rhodes wouldn't allow it to show. They couldn't afford to let up. As the ship's main weapons powered up once more, she focused her attention on the flagship, knowing that one well-placed shot could tip the scales in their favor. "Lock on to their command center," she said, her voice low but resolute. "This is it. The Horizon's cannons fired, the beams of energy cutting through the vacuum of space like a hot knife through butter. The flagship's shields flared as the blast hit, but the impact was enough to send ripples across its surface. Another shot came, then another, each one wearing down the flagship's defenses. "We're making progress, Captain," Hayes said, his voice tinged with hope. "Their shields are weakening." Rhodes allowed herself a small, fleeting moment of satisfaction. They were getting through. The Empire's retaliation was swift and brutal. Their remaining ships closed in on the horizon, launching a full-scale assault. The ship shuddered under the barrage, but the crew held fast, determined not to give in. The tide was turning, but it was still far from over. "We've got another fighter squadron inbound," Hayes warned. "They're coming for us." "Deploy the last of the drones," Rhodes ordered. "We need a distraction. Keep them off us long enough to finish this." Outside, the Horizon's drones scattered, creating a decoy that drew the Empire's fighters away from their target. It was a brief opening, but it was enough. Rhodes signaled for the final strike. "Now! All power to the forward cannons!" The Horizon's main guns flared once again, a single, concentrated shot lancing out through the black void. This time, the flagship didn't just shudder. It cracked. The shields collapsed under the pressure, and the flagship's hull was breached. The explosion that followed was a blinding flash. The flagship, once an imposing force of destruction, erupted in a shower of debris, its core exploding as the EDF's final shot tore through it. A cheer broke out across the command bridge, but Rhodes stayed silent, her gaze fixed on the destruction they'd wrought. The Empire's formation faltered. The remaining ships began to retreat, their coordination breaking down as the flagship was destroyed. The battle wasn't over, but the momentum had shifted. Earth had struck back, and the invaders were retreating. "Earth stands," Rhodes whispered under her breath, watching the stars once again. The fight for Earth had only just begun.